Finance Committee meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, and justice for all.
Okay, I don't believe we have any public comments, so we'll jump right into our buildings and grounds. Our first item on the agenda is summer project updates with Mrs. James. Go ahead.
And Mrs. James, real quick, before you start, Mr. Graham, is Mr. Keener and Mr. Garber online?
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, just so the board members know, Mr. Maris and then Mr. Wagamuth, you can just make sure you check in with them to see if they have anything. Thank you.
So who do we have? Grant and who else?
Yes, good evening.
Grant and Richard. Okay.
Okay, James, tell you.
Good evening. Just wanted to give you the kind of the final update for the summer projects that happened this past summer. So the first thing that I'm reporting, the paving and concrete jobs that were done at our Rohrstown Elementary and our Mountville Elementary, the parking lots are all completed. The playgrounds are all completed. Everything is painted and everything is gone over. We have done the final checklist, and those items from the final checklist, the walkthrough, everything has been completed for that as well. I'll share with you some pictures. As I mentioned, I'm not the best photographer, so, excuse my photography, but this is just showing some of the playgrounds. This playground happens to be at Mountville, some of the painting and the games that were added to the playground. And so they had some extra fun things added to their playground there. PTO had bought some stencils, so we were able to incorporate under the amount of paint allotment. We were able to include the next picture as well. We'll show basketball courts and some of the other items on the playground. Next picture. This just again shows some of the playground. This one is at Rohrstown. Next. The other items that were completed, we did the boilers and chillers. Those are everything is installed. The chillers have been started up. The chillers are running, and we are cooling both buildings, both Landisville Middle School and the primary center. We are working on startups of the boilers this week. So we'll run through tests and everything. Chillers have been balanced. Everything is running well. There were one or two small things or one or two items that we did find as a problem, which the items have been reordered. The parts have been reordered, but we're able to run and cool the buildings without those items. And as soon as they are in, which could be a few weeks, as soon as they're in, they will be added and they will be running. I have already checked the warranties for those items will not begin until those items have been installed. So it will be, those warranties will be delayed until the product or the parts are in. Next slide. Okay. Any questions?
Just one from me, just pure curiosity, in the spirit of consistency. When we go back to taking a look at Rohrstown and Mountville, can you remind me, do all of the elementary schools have similar paving or similar like games and things like that painted on the playgrounds, or is this
they have some form of games on their playground. So of course the 5 prototype buildings have a similar shape to their playground. So they kind of have all of them have at least a basketball court. Some of them have the Gaga pit. Some of them have different various paintings. They have Foursquare. They have a number of different games, depending on what the principal had selected for each of the buildings. What we've done in these contracts is we've kind of given an allotment. of X number of dollars for each of the playgrounds. And that was what the principals have to work with.
Got it. Thank you.
And as we move forward, as we've done some of the buildings, we'll be continuing with other buildings moving forward. We can't do them all at once, but the goal is to make sure we're getting to all of them, to get them updated, particularly as you start to see what we've been doing at LPC, Mountville, and Roarstown, to keep that process going with the other buildings.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Don.
Mrs. James, I know I sent the email to you, but again, thank you and thank your crew for everything they did. The schools, when I went around the first day with Mr. Braversky, were beautiful, and I did get to see, I know we were outside at Mountville, so I did get to see the results and what the kids
Yeah.
were.
So, and you got to see the new playground surface as
Yes,
well?
And
Yeah,
but it's big difference under the swing sets as opposed to the
absolutely.
rubberized mulch or whatever you.
Yeah,
you call it.
absolutely.
Yes, it's, yeah, I think if what I was walking on, and I don't really want to fall, but I'd much rather fall on that if I had to than the mulch.
Yeah.
So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Grant and Richard, any questions on the update?
No, Mr. Maris, thank you.
Anyone have any additional questions? Dustin? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the second item, which I believe Fadavia gonna give us an update in capital planning.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So in front of you should have a memo with some key highlights of where we're at and where we're going in the next 30 days. It's been a process. This committee has been patient and we appreciate that. But we hope next month you'll be pleased with the results and it'll lead to a very open and transparent dialogue about potential projects over the next 3 years for capital needs. What we're going to be presenting next month is what we're calling a project and budget tracker. And what the committee is going to see is really it's an interactive spreadsheet that's going to track multiple things throughout the projects that we will be recommending, which include your budget costs, actual costs once a budget cost moves to an actual cost, approvals, procurement methods, et cetera, dates of expected completion, dates of start. You're going to see all that in one kind of comprehensive spreadsheet that will be updated and kept over 3 years. So you're going to, and what we're currently working on is the process of bucketing the projects for your review and discussion next month over the next 3 summers. As you know, back in April, we went through this process through the spring of trying to carve down this massive list to projects that we believe are the most necessary over the next 36 months. And that's what we're going to be presenting to you for consideration next month. Couple things I just want to share and almost prepare for what you're going to see next month. You're going to see buckets based on, year, which we're looking at like a spring, summer, that work would be done. And then you're going to see it across potentially multiple buildings because we may recommend that we bucket like projects to hopefully gain the best procurement efficiencies if we go out to bid or even if we do a level of joint procurement. The tracker is going to have a running balance. So as things shift from projected budget to actual cost, we're going to move that. It will subtotal it. So we're going to very easily be able to see how we're running and how we're doing both on the projects that are underway, as well as the planning for the next wave of projects in those future summers. The tracker is going to be, it's a fluid document. We've done this with a number of districts. So things may change, that it will update. Costs sometimes go up. Which again, we sometimes don't like to see. Sometimes costs go down based on what we were anticipating budget versus actual once we go through the procurement process, but you'll be able to see those ebb and flows and then how they really match up with the total amount allotted for those capital projects. So again, it'll be, I think, a very easy way to be able to track for us to be able to provide updates that you'll be able to see both progress from a work perspective, but also obviously importantly from a financial perspective. What we're doing and refining for next month's meeting, September 24th, is we're going through and we're updating and finalizing and reevaluating the April 30 numbers that you've seen. We're evaluating them based on current market conditions. And John could talk more to this. There's been a lot of bidding that's been happening even since April 30th. So we have, new data, new numbers that, again, we think we can utilize to even refine what you've seen in April even more to what's currently happening in the market and what we predict will happen over the next 9 or 12 months, especially for that first set of summer projects that we would be discussing for summer of 25. We will also update any contingencies for those 2 out years. So obviously 2026, 2027, a lot can happen in 24 months. So we're going to also look at those contingencies and we're going to note those. So it's going to be very clear to this committee what contingencies we're putting in based on, again, market conditions that we're seeing. And then we're going to discuss specifically procurement methods next month. If the board and the committee approves projects to move forward, what is the administration and Fidavia recommending for procurement methods for each individual project? So these are what we'll call kind of miscellaneous projects is what you're going to see. So with that, there may be reasons to deploy not just one procurement method across all these projects. So we're going to, go into detail and discuss that next month as well. John and Maddie will be here in person. Unfortunately, with my travel schedule, I'm going to be Zooming in. So I'll be going over all the details of the spreadsheet. And then John, obviously, from an estimating cost perspective, continuity perspective of projects will be here to answer any questions as well as Maddie and the administration. The other items of note that we just wanted to talk about, and I wanted to, I guess I'll turn it over to Kim about the fuel tank project. I know you wanted to give an update on that.
Sure.
So
sorry.
before you move on, maybe give the board a little idea because some may not know what you mean. I think I know what you mean. What are some different procurement methods and help just briefly,
Sure.
what are some options we might see there?
Sure. I mean, there's several options. You may see traditional bid where we, go out, we work to create specifications and we go out for an open bid process. There are some times where you may want to leverage joint purchasing cooperatives, depending on what the work is. And we can also do cost comparisons through that process. So we wouldn't recommend that you would necessarily take one price from a joint procurement cooperative, but it may be an option depending on the level of work. And then there's also other, there's other procurement, which I don't think will come into play here around like energy and that piece. I don't know that that will come to fruition necessarily, but we're thinking more looking at traditional bid methodology with some of the joint procurement cooperatives that are out there that a school district could potentially piggyback on to move projects forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I wanted to discuss with you, we currently have a fuel filling station located at located near our maintenance building. It's kind of in the parking lot between our Landisville Middle School and the maintenance shop. That current filling station is 2 500-gallon tanks, one with gas, one with diesel. They are above ground tanks and they are currently furnishing the fuel for all of the maintenance vehicles, mowers. We have the vans that we use here for that district employees can sign out for and use for transporting students for events or something like that, that also fill up there, as well as a number of the smaller buses and vans from STA. So particularly because of the amount of buses, small buses and vans that fill up there, these fueling stations over the past year or so have been used very hard. They are, I don't know the age of them, but I know that they are very, very old. They have been here way before I was here. So we're starting to have some issues. One of the things that we're having issues with is those 2 5-gallon, the gas tank, particularly that 500-gallon tank is not large enough. We're having to have fuel delivered every day because of the amount of fuel that's coming out of that tank on a daily basis, particularly, like I said, for the buses and the vans. it's really taking its toll on those pumps. So we need to start checking into pricing out, getting a larger fuel tank for the gas, and also getting those pumps replaced. We typically will use Hafer to do repairs on those pumps, and they have told us time and time again that the parts that they need to repair those pumps, because of their age, are becoming harder and harder for them to get a hold of, therefore causing the pumps to be down for extended periods of time and so forth. And we're getting fuel delivered in order to handle the amount of fuel that's being used in those pumps. We're getting fuel delivered on a daily basis. If the fuel company misses a day and they're not out there first thing the next morning, we're running out of fuel. So it's going to be necessary for us. So we've started coming up with plans. I've been in contact with More Engineering and also ELA to come up with plans on how we can lay out these fuel pumps and so forth. We have been in contact with the township as well, because of the proximity of those tanks to the railroad tracks. We wanted to make sure that that was not going to be an issue. They have said that that's going to be fine. There's not going to be any issues with that. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on all of this, because our next steps now are going to be to put this out to RFP to determine what the if we can get a contractor to install.
I have a couple questions. How old are the tanks?
That I don't know for sure. I know that they've been there for years and years. They're the first original tanks that were put into the district. So I don't know the exact age of
Okay,
these. They've
you
been
can
here
find that out for us.
way before I came.
What about a second smaller tank instead of one bigger tank? Is that an option? It would save us some money.
I don't,
Another 500-gallon tank instead of going to, what are you thinking, 1,000-gallon tank?
so we were actually thinking 4,000-gallon tank for the
We need that
gas.
big?
Yes,
And what's the basis for that?
because of the amount of fuel that's going out of that from the STA for the buses and the vans.
So we would fill how often?
Probably once a week
Okay,
or twice maybe, but I think we could probably make once a week.
okay. I'm just wondering if we look at some options, maybe a 2,000, a 4,000, and a second 2,000-gallon tank. Your incremental capital might be a lot more for
Yeah.
4,000.
So we were told, because I originally thought, something smaller, and we were told as far as the tank size itself, there's not a significant amount of difference in the cost for the tank when you're talking a 2,000 versus a 4,000-gallon tank.
Okay. Justin?
I have to back up a little bit. These tanks have been here for an unknown amount of time. Sounds like the tanks are okay. It's the pumps that are the issue. I guess my question is, if we've managed that many years with filling up daily,
But we haven't filled up daily. We've only filled up daily for about a year now. Last school year, we had to start filling up
what
daily.
changed?
The number of the smaller buses that they're using at STA. So I would also add, as part of the STA contract, they are not able to put fuel tanks on their site. So what they did was they added in their contract that they would donate $25,000 towards putting in new tanks and so forth, because of the amount of fuel that they're using and the amount that their buses and vans are coming to fill up.
This might be a wild card idea, but I also have to ask the question, does it make sense to work with a fuel card system for those smaller buses rather than spend those capital dollars on a tank? And is there that much savings in purchasing in large quantities that it would make sense to spend that capital, put that those capital dollars towards a much larger tank? Can those smaller buses have gas cards where there's tracking and there's accountability to go with that? Is that an option?
I have a question about that. Would that have to revise the driver's contract? Does it take more time? Do we have to have a contract with one particular station or, company that would
You
use
you mean,
that? I
you
I-
mean a gas company?
One.
Yeah,
we
like,
have-
would
we-
we have
Okay.
to, like only go to Sheets or only go to, wherever?
Oh, okay.
But also, can the drivers even, is that part of their contract? I mean, do they have time to, drive around and put gas in the?
Well, in the bus company, or the buses are coming here and
Mhm.
going, so, and the vans are coming here to our site to fill up.
Right, but I'm saying if they had to go out and they're out and they're like, oh, I don't have gas, I need to go buy Sheets. And then I have to go back to my route. I'm
Okay.
logistical.
They have.
How would that
key-
affect their daily?
They have key times when, so after morning runs, they
Mhm.
come and fill up.
And fill up and
then,
get
yeah,
ready
and
for the afternoon nap.
depending on the length of their runs, they would fill up. They know when to fill up, but it
Sure.
wouldn't have to be, they wouldn't have to fill up in the middle of their run.
So it's not any additional requirement on their workload or anything like that?
No, no.
Right. And
no.
we just recently went into a contract and consortium from purchasing from a fuel standpoint to get a
Yes.
significantly lower rate than
Correct.
you would have from a retail standpoint. Certainly
Correct.
can look into the difference between that versus, going what we have currently versus retail. But one of the things we have talked about in the past was making sure that we have the ability for the tracking when people are going
Right.
to the station for fill up. So that we know who's doing it, what's the frequency of that, and is it jiving with kind of what we're seeing?
Right, that's
day to day.
definitely a benefit
have
that we
that
would want to
currently.
add to this,
Correct.
is so that we have tracking purposes for tracking what the bus company is using, as well as what the maintenance staff is using. So this would provide tracking. I also want to comment on the tanks. So the tanks are not in good shape. We have had the tanks about 10 years ago, we had the tanks emptied and we had them scrubbed on the inside and recoated. We're now getting to that point where it's going to have to be done again because we're getting residue, rust, that sort of thing that's coming out with the fuel.
I guess I just would like to see more options here and not just say we need 7 days. What is the days we need? I mean, if we can, I realize 4,000 and 2,000 is not a huge change, but we shouldn't spend any more than we have to. I like looking into Justin's idea. You mentioned the tanks need coated again in the age. What is the cost to recoat? I think we need that as part of the information. I'd like to see an intermediate quote, maybe for 2,000 gallon, and maybe we add a 500 gallon. I guess what is the number of days? Is 2 days okay every 2 days, or does it have to be 7 days? I think, at least from my standpoint, I'd like to see more options and just go into a 4,000 gallon tank, get the estimate and get the board to approve it. I think we need some intermediate options.
Okay.
Are we sure with sorry, go ahead.
No, I say, and right now it's just FYI, this is coming. More information will be coming
Okay.
to you, but just kind of starting to plant that seed that something has to be done with those
Understood.
tanks, with the pumps. And so as Kim's getting information, working with Karen, working with Derek from a busing standpoint, all that will be brought forward to you to determine what really would be the appropriate next step. But we have to do something
Yeah.
because our current method
Understood.
with what we have from the pumps facility standpoint is not going to last. So it's a critical piece. We have to look at.
So designs,
Pardon me a moment.
hold on, Grant, I'll let you talk. Design basis, design scope, what's the number of days? Is it 2 days, 3 days we fill up? And I think we need to determine that, and that in turn determines whether we get another tank or replace everything with a big tank. Go ahead, Grant.
Thank you. So I guess, first of all, I don't think the board should be down in the weeds on how many gallons the tanks are, but my overarching question here is, to what extent, if any, are we saving money by getting larger deliveries at less frequent intervals? For example, if the fuel company doesn't have to come out every day, if they're coming out once a week, once every 2 weeks, there's a real savings to the fuel company. To what extent are we saving on a per gallon cost? That to me is probably the more significant question here. Like, what are we paying right now? The retail price in the pumps is around $3.50 a gallon. What are we paying right now on the 500 gallon daily deliveries? And how much would we pay for the 2,000-gallon, 4,000-gallon deliveries?
I mean, that's a great point, and that would be part of the analysis for
Right.
different size tanks, different number of days. Judy, you had a point?
Yeah, along Justin's train of thinking, that's where I was leaning as well as exploring. Maybe it's not a fuel card that can be used at any sheets, but maybe it's the one that can be used just up here at Kellogg's because you've got the diesel depot for trucks at the 7-Eleven. And if we only use that spot, can we get a bulk discount from that fuel company if that was the only spot that everybody went to, since it is a truck depot? That's just another thing to.
Pat, you've been wanting to talk. Go ahead.
The first thing I was going to ask was exactly what Grant asked. The second thing I was going to throw out was exactly what Judy said. So thanks for getting into my brain and stealing all my
Yep.
stuff.
So we have,
So-
as I said, we have a
of good
contract for
ideas.
fuel already. And so we'll bring that all back. Again, this is just kind of that starting
Yep.
point. Everything will be there, the current contract, what we were able to negotiate, which was great rates for the current fuel contract. But if we are going to look to do something different, we have to make sure that we understand our current contract versus what we can do differently. And then what are those options? And so again, recognizing that what Kim is sharing, something has to be done, but all of those ideas will be brought back to a committee for further discussion before we can go any further with this.
And certainly we would have to have much of our grounds equipment runs on either gasoline or diesel. So we would have to have some sort of tanks here because obviously we can't take those vehicles elsewhere, and to get the amount of fuel that we need to fill those, it's not like we can go use one of those red jugs that you fill up your home mowers with. Yeah.
So I appreciate knowing this ahead of time because often we get projects like this and we need it last week. So what's the urgency? What kind of timeline do you think we need this replaced by? Because
Well,
you
we're,
said there was difficulty with the pumps getting parts, so.
right, sure. We're making it work the way it is now. We have scheduled deliveries. And when I say every day, I don't mean 7 days a week. I mean 5 days a week. We have scheduled deliveries that happen. It's just that if we, as I mentioned, if for some reason they miss a day, because their trucks broke down or something like that, they miss a day, we're running into problems. Then the next morning, if they're not there first thing in the morning, we're running out of fuel. It's not a good thing for the tanks if you're running out of fuel. That will drudge up the sludge that is on any sludge that is on the bottom. So that's not a good thing. That we try to avoid that at any cost. So that's one of the things that becomes problematic. And then just if the pumps break down, then that can be problematic. So we're making it work right now. So it's not like I'm against the wall that I have to have it done immediately. We have time that we can do some research here.
So
So
we're
what's the
looking at a
backup
year
plan?
to 2 years? You'd like to have this in a year, 2 years?
I would say if we can do it if we're doing the project by next spring, next summer, that would be the
Okay.
desired. But yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting again. What's the backup plan?
Well, the backup plan is we'd have to use the gas cards. If
So
we
you get the
can't
cards
provide
and Go to.
fuel, we would
I
have to
don't even
use the
know
gas
name of the
cards.
place you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a backup plan in place.
Mhm.
Good, thank you.
Just again, curious, and I missed this, forgive me if it's a dumb question, forgive me. The big buses, they're all propane. Some of the little buses are propane though, too. Well, at least what I'm following on when I see a little
I-
propane thing on the bottom right, I mean, so how do the big
Sure.
buses get filled up? How does that work?
They have propane tanks at the STA site.
So they can carry propane, but not diesel or regular fuel?
That's what they're.
I guess
Yeah,
one's
that's a-
flammable, the other one's not. I mean, it's weird to me.
That's what they're permitted to do based
Yeah.
on the lease of that land.
Yeah, they have a
Interesting.
rental.
So
for
the
that
big
one.
buses get filled up there, everything else gets filled up. Understood.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The proximity to the railroad tracks is also an issue too, putting anything over at STA.
But again, propane's totally fine to get hit by a train.
It was in there before when no one cared, and I think that's. the issue
It's
now.
funny. Interesting. No, I figured now's the time to ask. Appreciate it. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, the other thing to think about long-term is there a chance these vehicles could be electric in the coming years? As much as I think that's a slower process, but what's the lifetime of the tanks? Is there a chance we may go to more electric vehicles and we don't need these tanks in the future? You know, that's another thing to think about.
I was actually going to bring that up, not to muddy the waters, but I think it's important to understand what the strategic plan is for these vehicles in the future. And if we're not going to get 20 to 25 years out of a brand new 4,000 gallon tank and our savings isn't there, I think we need to be careful that we don't put a huge investment into this fuel system only to find out we're adjusting and making an adjustment to another type of vehicle that doesn't require those tanks. The other caution I would have is if this is going to be affected by any of our building projects or even remotely affect our building projects, the last thing I want to do is have new tanks installed, inspected, and then have to move them. So I think we need to be 100% certain if there's going to be new tanks put in there that they aren't going to need to be moved.
So I do have one last question. I'll stop asking questions. My conspicuous lack of knowledge here. How much are we talking? I mean, are we talking 20, 25 grand? Or are we talking like $250,000? What are we? I couldn't tell you what the cost of a 4,000 gallon tank is and new pumps. I wouldn't even have a guess.
I would guesstimate 50 to 100,000. That's just a guess.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's your guess. I'll
Usually-
guesstimate 250.
I would
You know-
say, I would say a lot more than that.
Okay.
I had a
Right.
project where I replaced tanks back in 2008-9 when I was at Berks County IU. It was two, I think it was either 3,000 or 4,000 gallon tanks, one diesel, one gasoline. And back then, I believe it was 249,000,
Okay.
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So now
That's
we're just,
Carbon
sorry.
steel?
No, that's helpful.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
I forget if it was because I think it was coated with fiberglass, if I remember correct. Steel outside with a fiberglass
yeah.
insert, if I remember correctly.
Last
Diesel
longer.
tank were fine, right?
But that was a while ago.
The size of the diesel tank, yes,
Okay.
is
all
fine.
right,
Gasoline tank.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we're not sitting here for an hour
Yeah.
talking about something that's going to cost us like $7,500. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
We would still need
It's
to
real
replace
dollars,
the diesel.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would still need to replace the diesel tank because it is in the same condition and the pumps are in the same condition as what the
Well,
gas
remember,
tanks
the
are.
pumps and the tanks are two different things. The pumps can be fixed if the tank's okay. So we
But
do need to
the
get.
tank
age
is not
of-
okay.
Okay, well, we need to get the ages of those tanks. I'd like to know what that age is.
If we
And what
weren't,
the expected lifetime.
if we weren't filling up the STA minibuses and vans, would 500 gallons cover the district?
Yes.
That's why Justin put it at the
Yeah,
fuel cards, maybe,
That's,
and Judy, the same thing. Maybe that solves the problem without having to put a new 250,000 gallon.
For that
Yeah.
shorter period of time. And for the shorter, I'm going to say relatively shorter period of time, maybe 10 years, as the vehicle fleets change over
Yeah.
time. And to
Right.
your point, perhaps electric or hybrid or gas,
right.
you know, that maybe it makes more sense to change the fleet versus build a new tank.
Well, these are real dollars.
200, 250 was 4,000 gallon tanks.
It was 3,000 or
The one probably
4,000.
be 100, 125.
Right,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Too far.
But if you inflate that, 15 years now. it would-
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that-
it's, could be. I mean, the other piece I would just mention to think about, no matter what tracking system, there's tax reimbursements on your fuel. So whatever you do, because I've seen this happen where they've used like a Sheets or a procurement card. And if that tax rebating isn't accurate and done or accurately, that can cause problems from an audit perspective. So that would just be the only other thing as part of this conversation, where if you're I'm assuming you're using a consortium for fuel at this point or no?
Not
All right,
anymore.
Not anymore. Okay. So if you're tracking all that tax, that'd be something maybe we should talk about, Ms. James, when
Mhm.
you're looking at this. Because I've seen that become a problem
Okay.
in my past. So.
It would
yeah.
help me as I look at this decision to understand the return on investment for that tank. So what is the cost of a tank? How many years would it take us to make up the savings and bulk filling versus the card? And also, what kind of tracking do we have on that tank currently? Could I go fill up tomorrow during the school day and would you know it? I look at you and the way you smile would lead me to believe that I could drive in there and fill up my car tomorrow and you would have no idea unless someone called me.
You would have to have the proper keys to get to
Okay.
it.
But you don't have any way of knowing if someone with keys was using that fuel. And I'm not suggesting somebody is, I'm just saying the accountability around the current system is
Which is-
also lacking.
Right, which is why we would like to move to something where we have accountability.
Yeah. So I think we need to look at other options, and I would want to know if that tank's $500,000. How many gallons of gas do we have to buy at Sheets, for example, to pay for that tank? And how many years does it take to get there? That's easy to back into if you know how much you're paying per gallon, how many gallons a day you're using, and the cost difference between Sheets and there. That number would be helpful. It's going to take us 20 years to get a return on investment on that tank. I'm cautious about spending those kinds of dollars, saying that we might have different vehicles in 10 to 15 years.
My gut feel is the price differential bulk versus the shorter deliveries is not going to be substantial, and it's going to be a 20, 30-year return on investment. But we need to run those numbers to ground to see what they are.
Could this be part of the?
How much, I'm sorry, I never heard an answer to my earlier question. How much are we paying right now for the 500 per gallon for the 500-gallon deliveries, Mrs. James?
I would have to find that information out for you. I don't know what the per gallon price is.
Can we just have this added to the presentation next month? Because it seems like even though this was on the other items, it may be more of a bigger item, and then it can work into that fluid pricing that you guys were talking about, and you can work together.
We can get you some of those answers for that.
Thank you.
I think I don't think you were planning to come and it was just,
This is just.
you
FYI.
were planning to have a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
This
This was a
this was-
discussion, not,
was
hey,
it.
we're doing a 4,000-gallon tank, approve it for it. I don't
Correct.
think that's what you're.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The next steps that we would have to take would be to put out an RFP for that, for that project. But you have questions that would need to be answered first.
Any more questions for Mrs. James? Are you guys finished?
I have one other item.
Okay, I do have a question for you guys.
Sure.
Are these the projects where there was 3 categories and there's some that were absolutely needed to be done as soon as possible? I assume that's these projects.
That's what you're gonna see.
So this is something we have to do regardless of what we do with the high school.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, thank you. Yeah, the only other update, just the DCED grant. As you know, the district applied for funds for potentially 2 roofing projects. Just wanted to, kind of alert the committee. Hearing, word on the street is on September 17th that awards may be made. That's the DCED holds a public meeting like, a school district does. So there's a lot of anticipation that those awards may be announced at that meeting. So, we'll be tuning in and obviously we'll provide an update, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that Enfield gets a little bit of money through that.
Any idea how much you think we could get? Any
I forget
ballpark?
the application we put in for over 3 million, I believe was the application for the 2 projects, if I remember correctly. Yeah, there were a lot. Again, I don't want to get hopes up. My understanding is there was a lot of applications, a lot of requests.
How do they determine who gets what?
Yeah, it's with
Don't
these,
know.
I don't know what the exact criteria is. They definitely are doing a thorough review, because we received calls, not only for Hempfield, but for a number of other districts we work with back at the end of June, July, when the reviewers were going through. They were looking at the proposals, they were asking questions, looking for clarifying information. The DCED board, if you look at it, I'd say I'd call it a politically charged board, just to be frank. So how that plays into those awards, we'll see.
And what's the total estimate of the 2 projects?
That's
Ballpark?
what we said was.
About 3, and I think we.
Oh, you put in for the full amount?
Yeah,
for-
oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, we
Okay.
did. Yes, we did. So
Excellent.
we'll see. And I don't know if they're only going to be allowed to do full awards, if they're going to part. Sometimes, they'll take a pot of money and try and distribute it, maybe at a lower ask amount.
When is that date?
September 17th. Their next board meeting's not till November. So I think that's why there's a lot of anticipation that there'll be announcements at that meeting. So we'll keep
Maybe
you
we
posted.
Share that with board news.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as if we hear something,
Yeah.
we'll let you know. I mean, I do want to thank Karen and Kim and Chris and the Vidavia team. There was a ton of work that went into this grant to try and secure the dollars. So hopefully that it will pay off, but there there were a lot of grants submitted that we do know. So we'll see.
Which buildings is that for?
Landisville Primary and Landisville Middle School.
Okay. Any questions for Chris, right?
Chris, yeah, John, do you have anything else to add on what we reviewed from your end? Maddie?
All right, Richard and Grant, any questions about this roofing, trying to get some money from the state? The state or federal government?
State.
State. Any questions for Chris?
No, I'm good.
You good, Grant? I guess Grant's not there. All right, I think that's it for the buildings and grounds. I think we're ready to go to the finance committee. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll
Justin.
just jump right into the finance committee. And the first thing on the agenda is 4A and it's contracts. So you can look at the contract spreadsheet and you'll see those contracts. Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll see the contracts listed here, the ones that are new and the ones that are up for renewal. We had some extensive conversation at the last education committee meeting about brain tracks. And so that's on here. I think one thing that I want to remind the board that we talked about as part of that was that brain tracks contract would be for 1 year and it would require board approval. And that needs to be part of any motion for approval when we go to look at this on September 10th. And then the other contract that's new on here that I actually have some questions about, but we'll open up to everyone, would just be the Power School Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit contract. Can't say I remember talking about that, but that doesn't mean that we didn't. So I want to understand a little bit more about that cost and the rationale behind that, since I haven't seen that before, at least not that I remember. But I'll open it up to the group for questions. Again, this is will be on the September 10th. The September 10th agenda for the full board meeting.
Welcome. I have some questions about Power School. I mean, it's sort of serendipitous. At dinner last night, I was talking to a gentleman who does a lot of IT work for one of the major healthcare consortiums up here. And he indicated that Power School has been sort of notoriously unreliable, difficult to get updates made to, and that it has not been perhaps the most user-friendly system. And I'm curious if any of those things are reflective in our experience and how effective Power School has been as a tool. And to the extent that it's not been perfect, what are some of the pain points that we've experienced?
Before you jump in, anyone jumps into an answer, Grant, can you share again who you had dinner with last night that brought this up?
An individual up here in Alaska. It just came up in conversation.
Okay.
I
So-
can, go ahead.
I would say for Power School, from an educational school system standpoint, we have had no problems with. Everything has been very smooth. This particular piece is an add-on component that we have had prior discussions around, which allows parents to be able to digitally sign items to be sent back to us, as opposed to having to get a piece of paper, sign the piece of paper, hoping it comes back. So that's a significant advantage for us to be able to push something out, parents sign it electronically and have it right back to us. So we are trying to find ways to make it easier to get those things back and forth. But at least from my level, from the Power School standpoint, we have used them now for
2020, so
I'd say 4 years.
5 years technically with the.
Extensive review, I mean, I know there was a board committee that was through that whole process. And I have not heard of major issues at all when it comes to Power School. Mike, from your tech side experience, have you had any
No,
issues?
I would say Power School's working exceptionally well. And Grant, to your point, and I forget if I mentioned this when we renegotiated the Power School contract back in the spring, the support we get for Power School is actually through Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit. It does not come directly from Power School, with the exception of a couple things, some of the more specific modules. Historically, you are correct. I have heard some complaints regarding support, but that has generally been for those who are getting that support directly from Power School, as opposed to through an intermediary like we see at Carbon Lehigh. That is one of the reasons we went with them, is we get very good, very close, very Pennsylvania specific support which state-specific support has always been for any SIS, I think one of the areas that sometimes is difficult with a national provider or a national vendor. But I gotta say, we have not experienced any problems compared to what we were dealing with our last SIS. I would say all of the features we're looking for, all of the integrations with other products, we really have not had issues with. The departments that are out there that, whether it's special ed, the integrations with Schoology or anything like that, things are working the way they're supposed to. That doesn't mean there aren't hiccups along the way or some things that I wish worked a bit better, but I can't tell you a single piece of software out there that doesn't have things that I wish worked in a little bit better ways sometimes.
Okay, that's certainly good to hear. The anecdote that was related to me was that I guess the school system up here have requested something simple like changing the color or placement of a button on one of the screens. And it took Power School 4 months to get back to them, and then multiple months after that to fix the problem. Someone said something to the person that I was dining with, who is a recent IT graduate. He's like, let me look at this. And he was able to go in and fix it very quickly. And I was curious if that's emblematic of what we're seeing, but it might just be the Power School direct support versus, as you say, Mr. Graham, using an intermediary.
And to your point, Mr. Keener, that's one of the exact reasons we went with Power School, is that if you have a very good technologically savvy, competent staff, you can go into Power School and do literally anything from the terms of designing pages, customizations. So yes, between us, our own staff and Carbon Lehigh, we're able to do everything that you're describing. But to your point, yes, if you rely on the support 1,000 miles away, yes, you might be waiting a bit longer than if you have the skill set on staff to go in and do it in 5 minutes.
Okay, and certainly we have a more robust IT infrastructure than a lot of other places, so that's good to know.
For what it's worth, when we take a look at school management software systems, out of the top 24 ranked, Power School happens to be #1. So while realizing that nothing's probably perfect, it's good to see that Power School is ranked #1 of 24. So for what it's worth.
Is there an official ranking, or is like what? I'm curious where you saw that, Mr. Wagner.
Research.com. I can send you the link if you'd like. I don't know how great of a site this is, but Googled it and that's what popped up. I'll send you a link if you'd like, Mr. Keener.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that there was an authoritative ranking of school SIS systems. So yeah, that would be interesting.
Sure. There's rankings of everything, Mr. Keener.
Refresh
Thank
my
you.
memory. This is used by the teachers, students, parents, correct?
The student information system is used, yes, by students, by parents, by teachers, district administrators,
And how-
everybody in the
And
district.
how is our staff with it?
They
Yeah, I'm
use
looking
it
at
all
staff, I got a
every
thumbs
day.
up here from a staff member, like.
I have another question, which
Sounds like it's working.
I
Yeah.
think doesn't have any bearing on this. Since this is from the special ed department and it's for digital signature, and I understand you want to get papers back, et cetera. Is there a concern that perhaps parents might be signing things that they don't understand or they haven't discussed with their team?
This is
their
not special ed.
students?
It says special programs in here.
Well,
From,
It says-
I mean, it can
It
be,
says
but
development budget,
so-
special education.
the part of this for us to be able to roll out is to be able to have parents all around the district to be able to use it.
Okay,
Um,
I
So,
get that, but it was because it was from that,
uh,
that department's budget. That's why I was asking. Well,
should be tech. But anyways, we'll look at that.
Yeah, this is a module that's being added on to the existing special programs component of Power School that essentially, I think Mr. Walgemuth described it as similar to like a DocuSign, if you will, that
right. and
integrates digital
I
signatures into
understand
the
that.
workflow that's there, yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I just wanted to.
I see where you're looking
Yeah.
now. I was looking at something
Okay.
different. So
I-
we'll,
I
we'll
just
clarify
wanted
that for the
just
10th.
That, you know, if
And
those parents who are and guardians who are signing this, that there's also that they've had interaction with their team and, you know, I don't want anything just randomly signed and for a parent to come in later and go, what do you mean this isn't, you know, or whatever the question is that they might have.
And-
That's my only.
And to
question.
provide information as a parent who's just, this has happened multiple times this week because at the beginning of the school, a lot of the teachers ask, like, would you prefer in person? Would you prefer virtual? Would you prefer us just sending it to you and you reviewing it yourself? And I know with any of those kind of documents, you can change that request at any time. You know, it's not solid. So I appreciate our staff.
Every
Yeah.
parent and guardian understands what they're signing, and because it is a special ed component, and we have heard anecdotal and actual information where sometimes things aren't being done, where the team and the guardian and parents and the student all are on the same page. That's my only question about this.
I don't
all.
believe that this would be replacing like signatures during a live IEP meeting or anything along those
Right.
lines.
I mean, it can be, but
they're zoomed
right
in.
now it's the starting point for us is things around attendance, things around field trips, things around those basic parents signing signatures. You know, it can be used in a classroom with teachers if they're looking for parents to sign off on things. We do have to be very careful on the special education side. The parents do understand what it is they are signing through the IEP meetings, et cetera. So yes.
Yeah, this isn't replacing any of the requirements for
Correct.
IEP meetings and anything
Correct.
like that. This is
Yeah,
just adding.
no, but to your, I get your point. So we'll get this all clarified and make sure
Okay,
that.
and I have two follow-up questions as well. First, I guess I would say, Mrs. Johnson, I certainly appreciate your concern that people understand. All this is a format of delivery. If they don't understand it on hard copy, they're not going to understand it online. The delivery mechanism does not have no impact on their comprehension. My second point is, can't we just use DocuSign or something like that? Or is there an advantage to the integration here? I mean, I would assume the district already has accounts to facilitate secure signatures like DocuSign or something similar.
Say that, no, I mean, there's not a digital signature piece built into PowerSchool. That's what this contract is for. The PowerSchool, again, with the special ed modules, like all of those documents that parents end up signing are generated through PowerSchool itself. Like a special ed teacher, or whoever, will go into PowerSchool, fill out the various components of the IEP, the GIEP, the 504, whatever it is. All of those then get compiled into a PDF, which right now is being physically printed for signatures. This allows basically a digital signature to be embedded in that file when it's all done as part of the workflow process, the approval process, the review process, things like that. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we could use DocuSign, but it would be cumbersome and would add an extra step. And this would just seamlessly integrate. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, yes, we'd end up having to pay for DocuSign then, because we'd have
We
to go.
probably already have DocuSign. I mean,
So
right? But
we have a limited number of seats with Adobe's digital signature platform. We do not pay for DocuSign.
It begs a question, and I appreciate your question, Mr. Keener, but your question begs this question. Do we need to look at a system to move to electronic signatures across the district that isn't just limiting us on the PowerSchool side? And then from those efficiencies that we gain, I always ask the question, all right, I'm glad we're working smarter, not harder. And I appreciate the progressive nature of this. However, then the workload for individuals that may be getting and chasing paper diminishes. So how does that return on investment occur? So do we need to look at this at a broader scale since we don't have anything across the district? And if we have a plan to do that, it might be short-sighted to do that in one specific area. It's just a thought, more of a question than a comment.
Now, I should say HR does use Adobe Sign. That's included with the Adobe licenses we get. So a number of the HR forms, if they're being done online, do have a digital signature platform. Beyond that, I'm trying to think if there's a lot of areas we're collecting signatures, true signatures that are legally binding, if you will.
Just mine usually.
The what, just yours? Yeah. Like I said, special ed is the other biggest area, I'd say, where we're collecting signatures, if you will, for that, but we can certainly give you some more summary on that.
Well, if there's no other need to look at it district-wide, then I don't have any concerns about considering this option.
The advantage here is that it's already linked in PowerSchool to a specific student. So everything then goes into that student's file and there's always a record of it by student from that parent. So we have the ability to always go back to say, you signed it here on this date, and it's already in without us having to have clerical error of putting something in and hoping it gets to the right spot. So that is the significant advantage of doing this right through Power School. But on those larger, broader things, typically, speaking for myself, if I'm signing something on behalf of the district, I'm usually getting it from other entities where I then log in and do the electronic signature, and then I get the download, and then I get it to Mrs. Rhodes, who then PDFs it and uploads it. And so there's multiple steps there, but we're not generally sending stuff like that to other entities for those types of signatures. We're tending to receive them from our students, other organizations. But for our students specifically, I would stick with Power School because it's directly linked to the student record.
I have no problem with this contract. I think it's progressive. I think it's the right thing to do. I would just ask that you continue to look at how does that change the workload for individuals that might now be close to this process that is clunky, for lack of a better term. And so if there's opportunity then around efficiencies and productivity, that we always keep that in mind if we're spending money to make that job or that process smoother, faster, easier.
You mentioned everything would be in the file, particularly within special ed, which I know they have to have
Mhm.
a paper trail.
Correct.
So am I understanding that when we have those audits and inspections,
They pull out the big thick paper file and I go through page by page by page.
but now instead they would go through?
No, special
they
ed, we're
still
required to have
they
the paper
Still
copy.
always have the paper.
Correct.
Okay, thank
And
you.
we have them locked stored in a specific area.
I don't want to know.
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
That's more than enough.
All right,
Thank
any
you.
other questions, comments on any of these contracts? Mr. Garber, Mr. Keener, or anyone else? They will
I'm
be
good.
on September 7th, so now's the time. Anyone? Did I hear you, Mr. Garber?
Yeah, I said I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm good as well, Mr. Walker. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Last call. All right. We're going to move on to financial action items, and that's financial action item A, which is the motion to approve. I'll need a motion to approve financial action items 5B, 5C as presented. And you'll see that it's a consolidated application for the federal programs and the personnel action items, which is B and C. Can I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
In a second? Okay, thank you, Mr. Nato. Thank you, Mr. Maris. And any discussion around these items? Have you had a chance to look at them? Any concerns?
There's someone here.
Yep, no, so we'll do this and then I'll introduce, yeah.
Did I miss
Yep, you're good.
something?
Yep, you're good.
Okay,
You're good.
I'm following the agenda.
Yeah, you're good.
I guess my only question is, these personnel items, are these newly hired faculty, or why are we dealing with these off cycle at this meeting?
So yes, these are individuals who we have employed late with the summer. And I have, per the board's authority, the authority to extend that. And so we're just trying to do it so that they feel comfortable to be able to resign from, if they're coming from somewhere else, start the 60-day clock for their hold. So we're trying to do it in the most expeditious way to get this done.
All right, last call for this. And then we're going to take it to a vote. So everybody in favor?
Aye.
Fine.
Aye.
I know.
All right, that's a 9-0 in favor. Any opposed? Assuming none. So we're good to go.
And then if I could just share, we have Dr. Christine Strom here. So she is now officially our elementary special education supervisor, currently school psychologist with us in the district. So Dr. Strom, congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome.
Is there anything you'd like to share?
Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the administration here. I'm looking forward to serving our district in this new role, using all the things I've learned over the last 15 years here, and hopefully continuing systemic improvements. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 6A, that's the schedule of upcoming meetings. And if there are no other comments, questions, or concerns, then we'll adjourn, and we're going to adjourn to executive session for
Collective bargaining.
collective bargaining discussions. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All right,
I
Pat.
got three.
You got-
Second.
All right, Maris has a second and Wagner has a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe it's not done with that. So-